Sachas Megillah Daf Tes Zayin is a lengthy daf, and it continues discussing the Megillah. The Gemara will give drushos on many of the lines in the Megillah. We'll finish the Megillah in this daf. Along the way, we'll talk about a little bit of Parshas Vayigash and Parshas Vayechi, and then at the end, the Gemara will get into the greatness of Talmud Torah, learning Torah. So the Gemara says, we begin on the third line, Lo nasa imoi davar. Achashverosh's advisors told him that nothing had been done to reward Mordechai for saving the king's life, says the Gemara. Not because they liked Mordechai did they say this in order to get him reward, but because they hated Haman, and they knew that this would bring about the downfall of Haman. Now, Haman, the advisors mentioned that Haman had built a tree for Mordechai, so they said, Heichen Lai, built for him. So it was a tree that Haman built for Mordechai, so it says, Al ha'etzash or Heichen Lai, so the Gemara says Heichen Lai, that he really set it up for himself because he was the one who was going to end up being hung on that tree. Okay, then Achashverosh told Haman Vasekin Mordechai, do this to Mordechai Yehudi Yeshev B'Shar HaMelech, Mordechai the Jew who sits in the king's gate. So why all these expressions? So the Gemara says that he said, do this to Mordechai, this ride him on the horse with the clothing of the king. So he said, Mordechai, who's Mordechai? There's lots of Mordechais. He said, no, Mordechai the Jew. He said, there's lots of Mordechais by the Jews. He said, the one who sits in the king's gate. So then Haman said, well, him would be better off to give a village that he collect the taxes from, or a river that he could collect tolls for crossing. So Achashverosh said, yeah, give him that also. Al tapel dover mikol asher dibarta. Don't drop any of the many ideas you have, any of the things you say, do those all. Someone had no choice. It says, Vika Chaman Esalvush Vasasus. He took the king's clothing and he took the royal horse, and he went and he found that Mordechai was sitting in front of the Chachamim and he was teaching them how to do kamitza, how to take a handful of flour from a carbon mincha. So the Chachamim saw Haman approaching with a horse, holding on to a horse, and he said, okay, this Rosh is coming to kill us. They were afraid and they ran away. They left Mordechai. And Mordechai at that point, they said, let's not get burnt by the coal here. So Mordechai stood up and wrapped himself in his towels and he started to daven. Haman came and he sat and he waited till Mordechai finished davening, and he said, what were you just learning? What were you just discussing? So they said, we were discussing how in the Beis HaMikdash we bring a carbon mincha, we take a handful of flour, and then we get our sins repented, our sins are atoned. So he said, your handful of flour came and was stronger, it pushed away my 10,000 kikar kesef, my 10,000 talents of silver, because I bought from Achashverosh the right to kill you all with 10,000 kikar silver, and you just did your little thing with the flour, and that knocked off my whole investment. So Mordechai said, Rasha, you're my Eved, remember, you're my slave, I bought you as a slave. So if a slave owns something, who owns the slave and who owns what the slave owns? I own you, and I own your 10,000 kikar of silver that you're all upset about. Okay, Haman said, well, put on this royal clothing and ride on the sus, ride on the horse, because the king wants you to do that. So he said, I can't do that. I need to take a haircut and I need to take a bath first. It's not, derech eretz is not covered to ride on the king's royal horse and wear his royal clothing when I need a haircut and I need a bath like this. In the meantime, Esther went and she had all the bathhouses in town locked. So he was unable to take a bath. So Haman had to bathe him himself. He had to be his bath attendant. Then he went to his house and he got a pair of scissors to give him a haircut. So as he was giving him the haircut, so he groaned and he moaned. So Mordechai said, Haman, why are you moaning and groaning? He said, I used to be the most chashuv person, the most highly respected person to the king, and now here I am being a bath attendant and a barber. So Mordechai said, Rasha, don't you remember, you used to be a barber. You were the official town barber of Kfar Kartsum. The Bryce that says Haman was the town barber for Kfar Kartsum for 22 years. Okay, after the haircut and after the bath, so he's dressed, and he said, okay, now step up on the horse. He said, I can't, I'm too weak for my fasting. So Haman had no choice but to crouch down and let Haman step on his back to climb up on the horse. So on his way, Mordechai kicked Haman. So he said, don't you know, the pasuk in your Torah says, al tismach, mishlei. It says you're not supposed to be happy when your enemy falls. Mordechai said, no, that's referring to one Jew to another Jew. But you people, we say, ata alba meisei tidraich, and you should step on their heights. Okay. So they went parading through the streets, and Haman called out, this is what we do for the man who the king wishes to honor. When they came around Haman's street, so Haman's daughter was on the roof, and she saw them coming, and she figured the one who was leading the horse was Mordechai, and the one who was riding on the horse was her father, so she took a klei cheres, a earthenware pail filled with waste material, and she poured it on the head of the man who was leading the horse, which turned out to be her father. He lifted his eyes to see what happened, and then she saw that it was her father that she had dumped all that stuff on, and she was so upset she jumped off the roof and she died. So Mordechai then went back to the king's gate. Rav Shesha says he went back to his fasting and to his sackcloth, and Haman was pushed home. So it says Avel v'chafui rosh, mourning and covered head, mourning because he had lost his daughter because she died, and covered head because of all the stuff that she dumped on him. Okay, so then it says Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends, and then later it says all his wise men. So what are they, his friends or his wise men? So the Gemara says even a Nachri from the nations of the world, if he says something wise, you call him wise. So they did say a wise thing to him. They said, you're about to fall before the Jews. So they therefore were referred to as being wise. Okay, going further, they said that if this Mordechai is one of the other Shvatim, you have a chance. But if he's from Shevet Yehuda, Binyamin, Ephraim, or Menashe, you have no chance, because Yehuda says, it says Yadcha ba'ir fevecha, your hand is at the neck of your enemies. The other three, it says Lifnei Ephraim u'Binyamin u'Menashe oiros gurosecha, passing into Tehillim. Before Ephraim, Binyamin, and Menashe, you will awake your strength. Okay, then they said to him, Kinafal tipul lefanav, fall, you will fall before him. What's the double language of falling? Yehuda bar Elai says, they said to him, if this is the nation that is compared to the dust and compared to the stars. When they fall as far as the dirt, but when they rise as far as the stars, so you're going to have a long way down. Okay, then the servants of the king came, Vayavhilu, they rushed. The Gemara says they brought him in a bahala, they brought him in a panic and a shock. Rashi explains he didn't have time to clean himself off. And Esther said to him, Karno aniva ami, I and my people have been sold. Then she said, Ge'en hatzar sheva benezek hamelach. So the Gemara says that means the Tsar, the enemy, doesn't care about the damage that he's causing the king. He was jealous of Vashti and he worked it out that she should be killed, and now he's jealous of me and he wants to get you to kill me. So it says Vayemer HaMelech Achashverosh, Vayemer Esther HaMalka. It says Vayemer twice. What's two Vayemers? So the Gemara says first he spoke through a translator because it wasn't befitting to speak to the queen because she was a commoner. But then she said that she was from Shaul's household. Once he knew that, then he spoke to her directly. Vayemer Esther HaMalka. He spoke to her straight. Okay, then Esther said, Ish Tsar v'oyev Haman hara. The Gemara says first she wanted to say Ish Tsar v'oyev, she wanted to refer to Achashverosh himself. So she stretched out her hand to point to Achashverosh, and a Malach came and turned her hand so that it would be pointing to Haman, not towards Achashverosh. And then it says that Hamelach kam b'chamasai, and then Hamelach shav miginas habisa. The Gemara says you connect the two Hamelachs. He left the room and he came back to the room, both with anger. He left with anger and came back with anger. Why? Because he saw something outside. While he went for a walk in the garden, he saw something that made him angry there. What did he see? He saw a bunch of malachei sharis, a bunch of angels that appeared like men, and they were uprooting all the trees that he had in the garden. So he said, What is this? What are you doing? So they said, well, Haman said we should uproot the trees here. He came back in, and Haman was falling on the bed. It says Haman and nofel al hamita, that Esther was on. Gemara says it should be he fell. Why falling? Gemara says because there came a malach and pushed him on top of Esther, and then he was trying to get up and get off, and the malach kept pushing him again. That's why it says he was falling. And Achashverosh walks in and sees Haman sprawled on top of his wife. So he said, "Vaymi beisa, vaymi bara, terrible outside, terrible inside." Then he said, "Agam luchbash esamalka imi babayis," trying to capture the queen with me in the house. And Chavona spoke up and said, "Here's a tree." So Rabbi Elazar says Chavona was a Russia as well. But as soon as he saw which way the wind was blowing, and it was about to end up bad for Haman, so he switched sides and he abandoned him. Like a pasuk in Eov says, "Vayashach olav lo yachmal miyodo baroyach yivrach." He left him and he ran away. Okay, then it says Chamas Hamelach Shuchacha. So Gemara says it says twice that the king's anger abated. What's it 2 times? So Gemara says one is the king of the world, and one is King Achashverosh, or another one is that they are both referring to Achashverosh. One's referring to the anger over Esther, and the other one is referring to the anger over Vashti. Right now the Gemara goes to Binyamin and Yosef, which will circle back around to Mordechai. So Gemara says that Yosef gave all the brothers a change of clothing, and to Binyamin he gave 5 changes of clothing. Gemara says, how could he do that? How can he make the same mistake which caused him so much pain when Yaakov gave him the extra kesones pasim, and that caused the brothers to be jealous of him? The Gemara says, how could he make that mistake? Like the Gemara explains, because of the 5 slime weight of wool that Yaakov gave to Yosef more than the other brothers, the entire story ended up happening and he ended up going down to Mitzrayim. So how could Yosef then go and give extra 5 suits of clothing to Binyamin? So Gemara says he was hinting to him that he was going to have a descendant who would go before the king in 5 royal garments. As the Gemara says, that was Mordechai who went before Achashverosh in Levush Malchus, and it lists 5 different types of clothing in that pasuk. Okay, then once we're on the subject of Yosef and Binyamin, so the Gemara says, why does it say Vayipol al Tzavre Binyamin Achiv? That when they met and Yosef revealed himself, he cried on Binyamin's neck. So first of all, our Gemara has the Yersa. How many necks did Binyamin have? Because the pasuk says Tzavare, which is plural. Rashi says that's not a kasha, and therefore we take this out. This is not a correct girsa, because psukim often refer to necks in plural, even though it's only one, because there are different parts to the neck. So the question, therefore, is, according to Rashi, is why is he crying now that he meets him on his neck? Should be happy. And the Gemara answers because he was crying over the 2 Batei Mikdash that are in Binyamin's Chelik, which are going to be destroyed. And then it says Binyamin cried on his neck. That's because of Mishkan Shiloh that was in Yosef's land, and that was also going to be destroyed. Okay, then in the same story, it says that Yosef consoled the brothers, and he said, your eyes see in the eyes of my brother Binyamin. He was saying, just like I don't have nothing in my heart against him, he didn't sell me, I have nothing in my heart against you, and don't worry about it. And he said, like my mouth speaks friendly to you, so is my heart friendly towards you. Then it says, he sent his father 10 donkeys loaded with to go to Mitzrayim. What did he send? Gemara says he sent good wine, which old people like. Then in Parshas Vayechi it says, his brothers fell before him, and they said, we're slaves to you. So Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer says that this is an expression, this is a fulfillment of the expression, that when the fox rules, you should bow to him. The Gemara elsewhere explains that there is one time during the year when the fox is king of the animals, and then everybody, when it's his time, you gotta bow to him. So this was Yosef's time, so the brothers had to bow to him. The Gemara says this can't be, because why would you call him a fox? Fox is a demeaning term. He wasn't any less than the other brothers. Why should he be called a fox? So Gemara says no, it's referring to a different pasuk when we say this. It's referring to when Yaakov bowed to him, when Yaakov came and asked him to bury him in Eretz Yisrael. So he bowed to Yosef. It says V'yishach Yisrael Rosh Hamita. So that's where we say when the fox is king, you bow to him, because Yaakov to bow to his son Binyamin, to his son Yosef, was bowing to someone less, but he was in the position of power at that time. Okay, next the pasuk in Vayechi says Libam. He consoled them and he spoke to their hearts. So Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes, who has said all these things so far, continues and he says, he said to them things which are acceptable to the heart. He said, you're afraid I'm going to kill you. The 10 of you were not able to kill me. I certainly won't be able to kill all 10 of you. The 10 candles couldn't put out one candle, so the one candle is not going to put out the 10 candles. Okay, now we go back to the Megillah. It says, to the Jews there was light, joy, sason, another expression of joy, and yikar, honor. So Gemara says, Ora, light, refers to the Torah, like it says, Kinar mitzvah Torah or. And candle is mitzvah and Torah is light. Simcha refers to Yom Tov, like it says, V'samachta b'chagecha, you should be happy on Yom Tov. Sason refers to bris milah, like it says, Sason ochel imrasecha, so the term sas is connected with imra, with speaking, and Rashi explains that the bris milah was given with Vayomer Hashem al Avram. And Yikar refers to tefillin, like it says, the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, Nikra, like Yikar, and they will fear you. And Rabbi Elazar Agadol says that refers to tefillin of the head. Okay, now the Gemara says, from Parshan Dasa, the first of Haman's 10 sons, when they are listed, all the way through the entire list and the next word, which is Aseres, all has to be recited in one breath. Gemara explains Avada from Yafo, because all of them, their breaths left their soul in the last breath. They all were hung and died in the same moment. Rabbi Yochanan says the vav of the word Vaizasa, one of Haman's sons, has to be stretched and tall, just like a pole that ship sailors use to guide the ship through dangerous waters. And the reason is because they were all hung on one tall tree, one on top of the other. Okay, now the Gemara says further, a drasha of Rav Shila Ish Kfar Tamrasa. We've had a few of those on the daf today. So the Gemara says that all songs are written brick on top of space. They are set up like a wall with the rows of bricks set apart from each other in a staggered pattern so that you have one space topped by a brick. That's a very sturdy way of constructing a wall. And we do that in order that the shira should have strength. These two shiras, the list of Haman's sons and the list of the kings of Canaan, those are all written in two straight columns, brick on top of brick and space on top of brick, and space on top of space lined up so that they're easy to topple, so that the names of Rishaim should easily fall. Okay, next it says, and what else do you want? He said, Esther came to ask, and the king said, in Shushan they already killed 500 people, and what else do you want to ask? Because the Gemara says he had first been angry, and all of a sudden he started talking nice. He was about to say, look how many things he got already, and then he said, oh, and what else would you like? The Gemara says it must be that a malach came and smacked him, and got him to straighten out his tone. Next it says, when she came before the king, Amar him a sefer. He said with the book. So Gemara says, he said? It should be she said. You just said she came before the king. Gemara says, no. We're talking about what was written on the sefer. It was written in there was that she came before the king. It was on the list of things that were written in the book, the Megillah, that was put together to relate all the events, including how she came before the king. Okay, next it says, Divrei Shalom v'emes. So the Megillah is called Shalom v'emes because it has the halachos of a Sefer Torah. It requires lines, just like a Sefer Torah requires lines. Alright, it says, Divrei Shalom v'emes u'ma'amar Esther kiyam. So Gemara says, Ma'amar Esther kiyam? Only the words of Esther were established? Gemara says, no, everything was established. The Divrei Tzomos, the Tefillah, and the fast days were also established, as well as Esther's word for generations. Alright, then it says, Mordechai Yehudi, last pasuk in the Megillah, Mordechai Yehudi, Mishnah L'Melech Achashverosh, V'gadol Yehudim, V'rotzi L'Revechav. Mordechai the Jew was second to the king, Achashverosh, great for all the Jews, and accepted by most of his brethren. The Gemara says most of his brethren, but not all, because part of the Sanhedrin were not approving of him because he had reached such a position of control and such a high office. So now the Gemara says a few things about Talmud Torah, which begin with this. The Gemara says, Rav Yosef says Talmud Torah is greater than Atzalas Nefashos, than saving lives, because Mordechai used to be listed fourth in Sanhedrin, and then after this story he was listed fifth, because we have two psukim describing the list of names of people who came with Zerubbabel. The one was before the Purim story, and that one says, Asher Boim Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Seroya, Re'elia, Mordechai, Bilshan. There he's listed fifth, that is. The next, but in a different pasuk, that pasuk is in Ezra. If you look in Nehemiah, it says, Habayim Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ra'amya, Nachmani, Mordechai, Bilshan. There he's listed sixth. So you see he shifted down one space because he lost learning time because of the entire Purim story. And Atzalas Nefashos is great, but learning is better than that. Then the Gemara adds to this, Talmud Torah is greater than building the Beis HaMikdash, because Ezra did not come when Koresh said they can go build. He only came much later, in the years of Dariyavish II. So Gemara says, why is that? And the reason is because his Rabbi Baruch ben Aneria was still alive in Chutz La'aretz, and Ezra wanted to learn Torah from his Rabbi as long as he was alive. Only when he died did he leave and go to Eretz Yisrael. Next, the Gemara says, same one speaking of Rabbah, Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, the greatness of Talmud Torah is greater even than Kibbut of Aim, honoring one's father and mother, because all the years that Yaakov was away from his parents, he was punished, except for the 14 years he was in the Beis Medrash of Shem Be'ever, and there he was not punished for those. Now the Gemara, the next half will go through the calculation of how we know that Yaakov spent 14 years in the house of Shem Be'ever.